Hi, I'm Vicki Suter, and welcome to the Profit Builder blog. These blog posts are all about helping you grow, thrive, and prosper in your business and in your life. And I'm really excited today to have my guest, David Davison, with me, who is a general contractor who has a design build firm. And I know David because we met at a NARI National Business Meeting this past year in San Diego, and we got to talking about his business and how he does business, and particularly how he manages pre-construction agreements with his clients. And I was really fascinated as I listened to him, because good sales skills really is about how do I bring value in that encounter, in that engagement with my prospect every step of the way. I'm not just trying to sell them something, I'm always trying to bring value. And so I really appreciated David's approach to this, and that's why I asked him to be a guest here on the blog today. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for being a guest. And before we have some questions that we've talked about that I want to ask you, and I want to hear about what your process is. But before we launch into that, can you just tell people a little bit about yourself and your business, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, so our business is going on its 18th year. We're a design build firm, so my partner Christopher and I own the business together. Christopher has a master's in architecture, and my background is construction. So I've been through multiple facets of the construction industry through my life and through my career, and involving industrial and commercial. And right after 9/11, I got to all of a sudden start my own business and do exactly what I wanted to, what I was passionate about, which is residential remodeling and building. Christopher and I both have served as our past presidents of the Austin NARI chapter, and continue to work with that chapter, which is quite strong in Austin, Texas. And I'm fortunate to be also serving on the NARI National Workforce Development Committee this year. So I'm excited about that. So we keep our hands in the marketplace pretty well, not just Austin, but across the country, to kind of see what's happening. And this topic of pre-construction services came up when you and I spoke in San Diego, and it's something that has really made our life a lot simpler as a design build company. And then now we've kind of perfected it to sell it to clients that have a third-party architect. And so the broad spectrum of it is that we're, representing the client through the whole process and holding their hand.
So let me just ask you a little bit, some questions around that, because what I understand from a lot of people that I work with, this whole thing of being able to sell pre-construction contracts with people can sometimes be a little challenging. But B, one of the things that intrigues me is that you're able to do that as a design build firm, where oftentimes people feel like, well, you're the designer and you're the builder. Why should I be paying for pre-construction services if you were the ones that designed it? And so that was really the thing that when you started talking to me about it, and I'm like, wow, you have such a lovely way of navigating your way through that conversation with people. So can you just speak to that? Like, how do you approach that conversation and bring that up with people, that that's an important and useful and value-driven thing for them to do in a way that you're able to sell it?
Well, whether it's with our architect staff, which is Christopher and team, or it's another architect, it's very similar in the regard that architects are really good at designing projects, and some are much better than others, and incorporating constructability into their designs. And then, so you get in a position where you're trying to kind of take them through the process of, here's what the design element is. We also probably need a third-party interior designer. Maybe we need, or most times need, a structural engineer involved with the project, sometimes an environmental engineer. So the more and more complicated the projects get, the easier it is to sell pre-construction services, because I'm basically acting, if you will, as the kingpin, and I'm pulling the consultants only when we need them, and are kind of being, for lack of a better word, the puppet master of pulling all those components and all those professionals together. I mean, it's much like I tell clients all the time, you go to your general practitioner doctor and you have something wrong, you have an ailment or whatever. He's not an all end all is when it comes to doctors. There's internists, there's surgeons, there's orthopedics, so he's doing, kind of the same thing. And that's kind of the way we approach the pre-construction services. The sooner that we get on board trying to orchestrating that, yes, it's the pre-construction services cost are typically a little less than when we're designing in-house than they are when we're working with a third-party architect. But all in the same, it's still a key element because people are wanting bigger, nicer projects. They're wanting it done faster, and nobody wants to give up their time on thinking that a project. We all fight that HGTV myth that I call, and from day one, you've got unrealistic expectations that you're dealing with the client. So the more information you bring to the table and the more you can help them orchestrate the process, the easier it is to sell it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have 17 years of historical cost data in our company that we can utilize from projects. So I can sit and look at other projects and tell, this project is similar to that one. Let's talk down this road. Let's pull these costs to kind of give them an idea of where we're headed. But at the same time, every project is unique, and we want to address that with the client, from day one.
So how do you, I appreciate your analogy about going to a general physician and they refer you to a specialist. How do you navigate the conversation to separate it out so that it's not included with design services? How do you explain that to a customer? Because I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, well, that makes sense. You've got to bring in different specialists to help you really assess the whole of a project, and that requires somebody who's I think you said puppet master, like the person who's coordinating all of that. How do you make the distinction with people about why that's not included in the design side of it? What's the conversation that you're having with people that says, hey, these are three separate things, right? There's the design, and I'm particularly referencing when it's in-house, right? When it's an outside designer or architect, that makes sense, right? Because now we're talking about the feasibility of construction. How do you explain that not being part of your design services when you are providing those design services?
Well, it's really no different than with a third-party architect. I mean, we're still taking information in and information out and orchestrating who that goes to. At the same time, we're not only just developing a design that's cohesive and that meets their desires and wants, needs, and we're also looking at timelines. We're looking at the cost models, and sometimes those cost models occur 3 times during the design of a project. And that doesn't necessarily happen, outside of this realm. The other thing is too is we're doing we've basically cleared out a list of vendors or industry partners that we hold at a high esteem, and that we help our clients orchestrate through that process of material selections, which can be quite daunting. So the number one selling, I think, factor for us is that we have enough history of doing this that we know that the cost of pre-construction services for a project is 1 to 3% of the cost of the construction cost of a project, but the savings historically are 5 to 7%. Well, it doesn't take a magician to figure out that they're saving money by initiating a pre-construction services contract.
So you're saying that you separate it out as a separate thing so that you're explaining to them that this is a separate service, that it's not part of design, and specifically that by you investing this 1 to 3% of the total cost of the project, in the long run, it'll save up to 5%. So I love that
5 to 7.
5 to 7%. Okay, I love that you have that data. Can you just speak more to that? Speak more to that, like 1 to 3%, 5 to 7%, like how, I mean, I could pick things up about why that is, because it's that whole thing of like when you plan it in advance, it always costs less in the long run. But can you just, like, from a practical point of view, from your experience and what you see in your data, where are those places? And
Well, basically, it comes into play with the difficulty of the project and how many different design players or personnel that are involved, disciplines, if you will, the structural, the environmental, all these kind of things. We find that the highest savings is when the most number of personnel are involved or disciplines are involved, because it's much more important to orchestrate the process as you go through and to make sure that you're not designing something in the structural realm that you don't need. That's the easy part about selling design build. And our design element of a design build project is basically an amendment to our pre-construction services contract. So we take the pre-construction services contract, which, by the way, I'm going to share with you and your viewership,
nice.
as a bonus. But we've kind of worked through this, and our Austin market has been very receptive to it. I mean, education is a huge thing, and we do a really good job, I think, with our Austin NARI membership of kind of elevating everybody. So all boats in the harbor rise with a rising tide, and that's the mentality that we take. And so we're willing to share that kind of information. But back to the specifics, the percentage savings, if you start burning hours with specialty consultants at $300 an hour, and you do that with 5 different disciplines on a project, it doesn't take very long to start developing savings if you're not having those disciplines overlapping one another, or they're not over designing a project based on what the needs of the project actually are. So when you have that pre-construction services and the builder involved from day one, and you're helping orchestrate that, then you're kind of dictating to those different disciplines about what are the requirements for the projects and what are the realistic expectations, of the client, and how do you fit into that element. Because anybody in this business, they're successful because they figure out real quick how to separate the wheat from the chaff, and they know which people, whether it's industry partners that supply product, or it's subcontractors, or it's entrepreneurs that provide an engineering discipline or an interior design discipline, which ones that you can work with. And so by orchestrating that process, you're not having them off on the side fumbling through the process.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, that part of what you're saying is by having there be an overlap and having all of the correct players there during the development of a project, it costs less money for those specialists. And I would assume that there's also an element there of better pre-planning and better designing, so that, and yeah, because one of the questions I think something I think I just heard you say is that you actually get into pre-construction at the same time. Did I hear that right? As you're doing design?
That's our preferred method.
Okay.
So if you're running pre-construction services parallel to the design element, whether it's in-house design or third-party design, then everything is much more fluid, and that's how you realize the maximum of savings.
And at that point, I'm assuming that what you're doing is you're designing and you're creating within that client's budget.
That is the optimum, goal.
Okay.
Yes. And keeping everybody within the guardrails, if you will, because it can get, clients, because of the HGTV myth, I call it, they have these lofty goals and unrealistic cost data that has been provided by, the media, and they believe it. And if they see it on the internet or they see it on TV, they believe it. So
we rebuilt that entire broken down house for $125,000. Yeah, yes. I love that. Okay. Are there other places where you see, when you talk about, say, you spend 1 to 3%, save 5 to 7%, besides that overlap of, removing that inefficiency of the rest of the teams or consultants who are advising on all of those costs, can you just share what are some of the other places where there's cost savings because this is an important element, I would imagine, when you're educating somebody in the initial contract or initial conversation with a prospect, you're educating them about why it's valuable to engage with you in pre-construction services. And when you're explaining to them about the 5 to 7%, what are some of the other specific things that you share with people to let them know how that's going to save them money in the long run?
Well, the top three for me is always been mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. I'm fortunate to have that background, a heavy amount of it on the electrical side, but a very strong element of the mechanical and the plumbing as well from working for an MEP engineering firm and project managing some pretty large projects. So as that element alone, which it can be a significant amount of the cost of a reconstruction or a construction project, if you can steer them the right way with things as simple as the proper selection of HVAC equipment, this proper selection in concepts on plumbing and hot water, and the proper electrical lighting, all those kind of things, so that not only you're giving them this beautiful finished product in the end, that's the end goal, you're also creating an envelope and a project that is going to serve them well for many years to come, and is going to be cost efficient and cost effective. And, doesn't matter how great a design professional is, whether it's an interior designer, a registered design professional, or an architect, they don't keep that close of tabs on what the market is for mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. They depend on builders and subcontractors and other industry partners to try to piece that together. Well, if you have that knowledge that's interjected into the process through pre-construction services, parallel to the design element going through, you're not redesigning as you go along. You're not getting to the end and have a project that's way out of budget, and they've got to go back and pay redesign costs to get it back into budget. And those are the top three: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, that affect these projects. Now, finishes, of course, is another huge element, as we all know, and the design professional, interior design, or whatever that registered design professional is, there's a lot to picking out just gorgeous finishes, but there's also a lot to bringing a project in under budget. So, I tend to see that when we're the most successful with bringing the wow factor to a project, it's because we have the team all on board, all together, and they're picking and choosing where we spend the money on a project, going through, not just designing it willy-nilly and then getting it, all but priced out, and the client goes, "Oh my God, no way," that kind of thing.
Great. So I love all those, and one of the things I'm hearing too is that you keep the client very much involved in that project, so that you're controlling those decisions so that they happen in a timely manner, because it's not always everybody else. Oftentimes it's the homeowner and their homeowner's inability to make decisions. So you harnessing the homeowner at the front end really has more control over what ultimately is the amount of time and money it takes to actually give them the product that they wanted.
Correct. So if someone is watching the guard post, if you will, and is kind of taking it down the path and keeping everybody within the lines, you have realistic expectations for costs, you have realistic expectations for timelines, and you hold accountable, no matter whether it's the homeowner or the design professionals on your team. Everything is moving then in a common goal and towards a common end that has much better outcomes than the contrary to doing a pre-construction services agreement. It'd be like, Alabama going out on the football field without a game plan. The results are not going to be anything like they are with Nick Saban and his team putting that plan together and everybody understanding the plan, so that when they step onto the field, and it doesn't have to be Nick Saban, it's any coach. There's a game plan and everybody understands the plan. If you walk out there on the field and you don't have one, the results are not good. And
everybody's aligned about their role, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the defensive coordinator is handling the defense. He's not running the offensive plays. And that's kind of the concept of pre-construction services is, we're human. We just try to keep everybody on the same page and moving forward, because these projects can stall and you can get into a position where nothing moves for 4 to 6 weeks. And, that just creates hard feelings with the client and
right.
the whole project.
Right. Nice. Well, thank you. And that is all super helpful in terms of being able to present to a prospective client why it's so important to have a pre-construction agreement, and how it's important to have it from the very beginning, so that the design team and the contractor are working together to bring a project in within the client's budget that ultimately will be able to save
2 to 4% net.
4% on a project. That's huge. So that's a serious dollars and cents value add right out of the gate in the sales conversation with somebody. In terms of the people who are listening, for people who have not done pre-construction agreements before, who would like to start doing them, do you have any recommendations or suggestions about how to begin that process, and maybe some tips for how to have that conversation with people when you're selling those services?
Well, it's like anything else that you do as a professional. You've just got to get to a level of comfort with it. So the best way I think to do it is just like we did. We started out with it being a very minimal cost as we were refining the process, so that the client, wasn't just overwhelmed with the cost of another professional involved with their project. We ultimately settled on what's about half of what a design professional would be, an architect or engineer or environmental specialist. So everybody massages that number to fit what they're comfortable with selling. And so we have gotten to a point when we have enough historical data. Number one, we have enough clients that have been through the process that will attest to the fact that it works, and they understand it, that are willing to be referrals for us to future clients. So anybody that's really skeptical and doesn't understand, what we're trying to sell, it's very easy for us to have someone to say, look, here's our history. This is what happened. This is how it worked, and this is how our project turned out. Because we all hear of those horror stories that are in the marketplace where clients just have a train wreck of a project. And most of the time, I would say probably 95% of the time, it could have been avoided if they'd have had somebody, being the train conductor and running the thing from day one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So part of your so just recap really quickly. Somebody's going to start to do pre-construction agreements. They want to embark on it. What are your top 3 things that you would recommend is how to do that and how to approach the conversation?
I think the best way to approach it is kind of just break it down into 3 key components. One, the pre-construction services is giving them a voice in the process to look at every angle of the project and understanding the cost of what the market is. I mean, someone like myself, like our team, you keep up with it every day, because the baptisms by fire, you don't forget. And so we're in tune with what the market is cost-wise. Number 2, we are used to dealing with design professionals, and we're able to work in a team format and keep everybody moving in the same direction. And number 3 is, so many clients get overwhelmed in the marketplace when they start looking at product. I mean, they start at Pinterest and that just blows their mind. And then they go into a design center and they have a professional there that's trying to sell them something on a transactional basis, which is the more they sell, the more money they make. And they're not really that in tune with, what are your wants and needs and what are your desires. So anytime you have those value-added experiences versus a transactional experience, and I equate that to, you go to the grocery store and you go to the ATM, those are transactional type experiences. You go to get your car detailed, or you go to get your toes done at the nail shop, or your nails or your hair done, where you're interacting with your hairdresser. Those are more relational type experiences. So the more we can take away the transactional experiences and tilt it over towards the value added experiences, the better the better the selling is when it comes to pre-construction services.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, David, thank you. Is there anything else that you would add at this point? And I know that, is there anything else that you would add at this point?
I think another thing that, we get into this PCS, pre-construction services defined scope that we talked about. That was kind of one of the things that you and I talked about a little bit about in San Diego. And the thing is you wind up with your goals and the objectives of the project very clearly defined. And you get cost data that's current to the marketplace, and it's relational to your project, not to just in generalities. And then you get a complete design. So the more comprehensive your design is, soup to nuts, start to finish, the less change orders there are on the project. And change orders drive not just cost, but they drive timelines. And that is a train wreck because nobody likes change orders. The homeowner doesn't like it. The builder doesn't like it. The industry partners that are involved with the project don't like it because it's just very laborious. And no matter what the general public might think, you never make $1 on change orders. Mm-hmm. So the client always winds up with a bad taste in their mouth, even if they're driving the changes.
Right. So that's really a big element of most projects. And my experience and all these years that I've been working with contractors, what I see is change orders on most projects average about 20% of the original contract value. What is yours?
Ours runs on average 7%, and that's over 17 years.
Yeah. So that alone is a testament to what, being able to share with clients, on average, because of various things like change orders isn't just, oops, I forgot something in the estimate. Change orders is the client, changes their mind, unforeseen conditions, changes in design and scope. All of those things are really what impact changes occurring on a project. So that's really a very dollars and cents practical thing that you can explain to people, that if you're talking about $1 million project, that's a lot of money.
It's real dollars.
Real dollars.
The other thing in the pre-construction services that we really push our clients to do is make all the selections in the front end. The more allowances you have in the project, the more opportunity for changes and things that it wasn't budgeted just right because the builder didn't know exactly what you wanted. Right. We try to get our projects down to where there's less than 1% of the total cost of the project that it's in allowances.
That's awesome.
We want to spend the time to identify, to help not only the architect, the design team, and the interior designer walk that client through all the selections. And that's the other thing. We don't play the shell and pea game. When they go to visit with one of our industry partners, whether it be plumbing or electrical for lighting or hardware or cabinets or whatever, those people that we work with, we've built a relationship over many years, and they're telling the client what we're paying for the project, for what we're paying for the product. The last thing we want is that client to feel like, some designers work with this, we'll give you 20% off a list and da-da-da. They never answered the question. We want the client to know this is what the product costs and make your decision accordingly, not the shell and pea game where you're guessing as you go through the process.
Right. Nice. So full disclosure.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
And you're setting realistic expectations that way. And we're big proponents of clients making objective decisions, not subjective decisions. So the feelings get involved and the emotion and those kind of things, that's where you start having, more and more problems. You get more back to the HGTV myth. Whereas if you keep it on the, objective side and making everything based on informed decisions, everybody wins.
Well, and I love that. I completely agree. The thing that I find in business, just everywhere in our businesses, that the more that the decisions that we make can be data driven with specific and measurable information, the more confident we are in the decisions we are making. So that clarity with the data allows us to have more confidence, also allows us to make better and faster decisions. And it's true for our customers as well. In my, I have something I call a sales process. And it's an entire document that's all driven off of helping people have a greater sense of clarity when you're in that sales conversation and you're in discussion with somebody about what it is that they want. The more we can help people have clarity, the more confidence they have in being able to make better decisions. And that becomes a better customer. And that also becomes a customer who builds more trust with you because you've empowered them with that clarity and that confidence. And people like that because, as builders, you've forgotten more than your customers will ever know about renovating or remodeling a home. And so that ability to be able to empower people with information is just a beautiful thing because it's really the key to building that trust and confidence with people. It's nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Intelligent design and the ability to scrutinize it as you go along is one of the best-selling tools for pre-construction services.
Nice.
And it doesn't matter whether you're charging $50 an hour for it or $200 an hour for it. You've got to match the cost of what you're charging the client with what you're delivering, and it's no different than anything else in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you would add? And I know that you said something about sharing your form, which is super generous of you. Can you, if there's anything else to add, and then maybe you can just tell us about that research?
It's basically a 3-page document, and it goes through defining the relationship of the parties. It defines what we're going to do under the pre-construction services scope of work, how we're going to interact with the players in the process, what is expected of the client and the owner, and how we orchestrate through that. So it's a great document. We've massaged it over the years. We have 2 other large design build firms in Austin that have pretty much adopted the same type of format. Their wording, of course, is a little different than ours, and you pick and choose what you want out of it. But it's a great starting point, and it's validated. It's been used in the marketplace, and it's worked. And so I'm happy to share that. And
that's super generous of you. Thank you.
Elevate knowledge is empowerment. So the more people that understand that, probably the better that we deliver to all of our clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, David. That's very generous of you. I will make sure that, first of all, there's a link down here at the bottom of the video, and then it's also in the blog post itself will also be a link to that document. So thank you. That's very nice of you.
Awesome. I'll
nice.
send it to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise and sharing this little slice of how do you bring more value to that relationship with a client in the sales process and also in the construction process. Help you guys actually capture the cost that you ultimately end up spending anyway, but most times contractors don't actually get paid for it. Helping your clients get better value and save more money, which has you be the contractor who, as you just said to me before we actually started recording, and David was telling me he's like super busy, he's having to turn away work. Well, that's what happens when you run a business where you have your systems and you're super clear about what you do and you're continually bringing value and having that open communication with your customer. So I commend you, and thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your expertise. I really
appreciate it. The tagline that goes along with that is process leads to performance.
Process leads to performance. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, make sure to check out the link below and get David's pre-construction agreement that he's so generously shared with us. And until next time, I hope that you continue to grow, thrive, and prosper in your business and in your life, and that you have found today's video helpful in helping you do just that.